Not a speck of light is showing, so the danger must be growing. Are the fires of hell a-glowing? Is the grisly reaper mowing?
Welcome to part 9 of Celebrian. This story is not for children under 18. Please leave if you are under that. When we last left off, Celebrian was rubbing some sort of liquid over her chest area, and we're going to see what happens. Take her back to her room and feed her well, so that her breasts grow immense, ordered the king. Back in her cell, she cleaned herself. They gave her a new gown and took away the dildo. They fed her meat and milk. She did not let herself dwell on the source of the meat or the milk. With the draught long out of her system, she dreaded the request she had made, and willed her breasts to remain their apple size. Perhaps the potion had not yet taken effect, because the swelling in her breasts subsided, and they seemed to return to her old size, perhaps a shade bigger. As for Ithalon, she never saw him again. He was not in the chamber when she had returned. No doubt he suffered before his death, but the memory of his scorn kept her from mourning. A week since last pleasuring the king, the door of her cell slowly opened. In the dim light she saw an elf, but not one maimed and near death. She was rescued. Later, reunited with Elrond in the light of the sun, clothed once again in garments fit for her status, she could not meet his eyes. Tenderly he embraced her and told her, "Fear not, my love. No matter what was done to you, it is over." During the return to Rivendell and afterwards, Elrond was kind and gentle with her. He held her often so that she knew he did not scorn her, yet made no attempt for sex either. When he felt her shudder at his touch, he ignored it. He knew it might be years before she was ready again. But years for an elf were nothing, when ages stretched before the both of them. Celebrian tried to get back to the dreamlike rhythm of life at Rivendell, but her dreams were filled by memories of how she pleasured the Orc King, and she was troubled by how often her waking eye turned to the bulge in the crotch of the warriors, or the sheathed cocks of the stallions. Most of all, she was haunted by her last request to the Orc King regarding her breasts. Morning and night she checked them for signs of change, but found none, except for the initial increase in size. They did not decrease. She was disturbed by that sign. Elf flesh restores itself. Even Ithalon's hand would have grown back in time. Really? Wow, that's kind of cool. And she could feel that her asshole was not quite so sunken nor so large, although the change was minute. It would take decades to return to normal, but clearly the process had started. But her breasts had not started to shrink back to apple size. It was good that they had not grown, but something was not right if they did not shrink. A year passed. Her eye still turned to cock bulges. But she could mask it, and it no longer bothered her. She sometimes felt the Orc King's cock in her mouth in her dreams, but not very often. Only her breasts remained stubbornly unchanged. It did not terrify her like it had at first, but still she was concerned. She could talk to no one about it, though. How could she possibly explain? So she watched and waited, cupping her breast each day for signs of change, growth, or shrinking. In the spring, travelers from the east arrived. They were a merchant party traveling to a distant Esgaroth. As it was a trip of many months, and they were a large party with women and children, they had many wagons, carts, horses, and even cows for milk and steers for beef. Elrond offered entertainment. In gratitude, on the last day, the travellers treated their host to a banquet at their camp with fresh beef and bread, their best wine, and a special treat unknown to the elves who did not keep cows. Ice cream. Ice cream in Lord of the Rings. Wow. Elrond watched Celebrian brush her hair. The banquet had ended, and they were preparing to sleep. They had still not had sex, but he was patient. He was pleased at her progress. She had calmed considerably since they had first rescued her, and she no longer jumped at his touch. "You seem to enjoy yourself tonight, my dear," he said. She smiled at him. "Yes, songs and food were, well, not our normal fare, but it was a happy party." "You seem to like the iced treat they made. You had several helpings." "Yes, it was very good," she said, blushing. It had been good, but she blushed not because of her indulgence, as Elrond thought, but because after she had finished she realized it had reminded her of the Orc King's cum. It was sweet and cold where he had been hot and salty, but even so there was something about its texture in her mouth that brought back the memory. "In that case, we shall keep a few cows and make our own ice cream in Rivendell." Elrond was true to his word. Cows were sent for, as were a few milkmaids, and a man to teach the elves how to handle the cows, and make ice cream. Soon the new confection was a regular part of most evenings in Rivendell. Celebrian always helped herself to the treat. One summer night she dreamed of the Orc King and his orc bitch with the great teats. She dreamed of the liquid the bitch had rubbed into her own breast. In her dream her nipples suddenly protruded an inch, then two, good Lord. Then her chest began to swell. Her breasts grew hard and taut as they expanded. They swelled and swelled all the while the orc bitch continued to rub her liquid into them. She saw her nipples enlarge to the size of the orc bitch's. Saw them hanging like her husband's limp penis. Wow, that's an image. With a start she awoke in the night. Her husband stirred beside her but did not wake. Her hands were cupped to her breast, still small, but were they as small as before? She could not tell. She spent the rest of the night waiting for dawn so that she could inspect her breasts when her husband left her alone during her toilet. When that time finally arrived, she carefully felt her breasts and nipples. They did seem bigger, but only by a tiny bit. She would never have noticed had she not spent the last many months checking them carefully, and perhaps it was just the dream working on her mind. She had to be sure. She took a hair ribbon and wrapped it around her right breast. She marked where the ribbon met. Over the next few days she checked her breast size with the ribbon as soon as she had privacy. The ribbon no longer met at the mark. At first she was convinced herself that it was merely the imprecision of her method of measurement, or a different tilt to her breast that shifted the weight. By the end of the week the ribbon was an inch short of her mark, and her breasts felt noticeably heavy. And I'm going to stop there and continue a little bit later. What will happen to Celebrian? Find out on the next installment of The Dramatic Reading of Celebrian, a Bad Fic.
Yes, the danger must be growing, for the rowers keep on rowing, and they're certainly not showing any signs that they are slowing.